Alright, we're going to go through the code for Shade Harvest, or Grow, which is a Photosynthesis clone. I'm Chris, and so far I wrote this code, but love your input. Okay. So it's all in one file except for the images, and it also uses a jQuery library. So it's a mix of CSS, HTML, and JavaScript. Here's a little bit of CSS for styling, and then here's just including the jQuery library. So it's a bunch of classes. Start off with, so a hex is a area on the board, a space basically on the board. A piece is like a tree that goes in a hex. And so here in the hex you see there's a place for a piece, which is set to null. Piece is a player, size, and has some details. Hex has things like a flag that's visited and sides, which are the hexes touching it. Now if its side is null, that's off the edge of the board. There's a property here, score, range, in shade, activated. So there's certain things as we traverse the hexes, we'll mark these flags and reset them. There's also an index map, which is mapping a hex to a number, so we can access it that way. Okay, so here we have a player. So a player has activated pieces and placeholders, score, energy, and yeah, so this is just setting up a new player and all their pieces. Piece placeholder, so it has like the cost and the type of piece. So let's say it's a medium tree and it costs 2 or whatever. I'm not sure on the cost at the moment, but here we have a list of scores for the different zones. So this would be the very outside zone, this would be the very inside zone, and as the score trees are harvested in those zones, the score gets slightly less and less. So these scores on the left disappear, and you can see my other video for a demonstration. Prices of various things. Yeah, so it's just radians and degrees. This is clearing the activated flag on a hex, turning instructions on and off. This is moving the sun, so it's the sun is the yellow bars on the outside, and I kind of did it so if it's like right on the top or bottom, you show it there, but if it's not coming from an angle, you show it as from the bottom and the side, or top and the side. This is calculating the final score. It's the score plus their energy, 3 points per energy, or 1 point for 3 energy. So. And this is counting the trees, so that's usually at the score at the end. So if the player has the most trees, if they're tied for score, the player that has the most trees and stuff on the board wins. And here we're getting a list of trees and seeds. I think these are used in a few different places. And here you can see check shade, so that's an optional play. So if it's disabled, then you can use whatever tree you want. But if it's in the shade, then we're not gonna return it. This is for setting up your first trees in the game. It's a little bit different because they doesn't come from your board. They just sort of place on the. They're not coming from your activated section. and also rules about where you can place it and stuff. So this is getting the score value of a hex. So depending on where it is on the map, closer to the center, higher score. Again, that's going to use this. Where is scores here? Here, yes, it's using scores. And then it's doing a shift, so it's popping off of the left side, that score. This is to see if a hex or a space on the board is in the shade. And so it's looking at trees around it, and it's also styling it. So if it's in the shade, then it changes the opacity here. And I'll go over how hexes are made, but like to show on the screen. At first I tried to use, I think HTML, what is it called? Anyways, at first I tried to use a different technique where you just use like the drawing stuff with HTML5, but it wasn't working for me. I couldn't map, like the images looked okay, but then where the mouse was and where I clicked, I couldn't line it up quite right. So what I ended up doing here is having 3 rectangles and rotating 2 of them to make a 6-sided piece. Here we have a grow function, so that's going to take the hex and it's going to change the tree to the next size up. And then, or harvest it. So this one does the harvesting. So if the old size is 3, then it changes your score. And it's going to put your pieces back into the placeholder, and also going to pop the pieces you used. So let's say if you're growing from a medium to a large tree, it'll pop the large tree off your activated list. Shouldn't be seeing anything like this. The game should force you to not make errors like that. Here we come to absorb energy. So energy from the sun. And this code check to see if the pieces are blocked. For a while we had an issue here where it was only looking at the next piece because this code was actually in this loop and this line wasn't there at all. So that's fixed. And then here we're having the max energy be 20. So after we score all the energy, if you have more than 20, it pushes you back to 20. So here it wants us to look if the tree will absorb energy, and it sets the CSS for it. So if it's in the shade, it's going to hide it. So opposite side. So if we're looking for which way the sun is coming from, then we want to see the opposite side of that to see which way the shadow's going. So that's what this function is. So here you see it's using the number 6 and 3. 6 way up here in hex. You can see the sides. There's 6 of them. 3 would be the opposite. Join. So join is part of putting 2 hexes together and setting up the board. So if you have one hex and you say that its first side is another hex, then the opposite part, the opposite side, would be the other hex's A. There's just some logging. I don't even think I use this counter thing anymore. Traverse goes through all the hexes and uses this callback function. Now, there's some heavy lifting. There's lots of different callback functions that call this traverse function. Range. Not quite sure where this is used. This might be for throwing seeds. Current hex, sides, length. Range max tree, seed tree hex. Yeah, so it's for throwing seeds to figure out how far you can throw them. So it traverses the map and looks for how far you can throw the seeds. Clean just cleans up. What is this? If things are visited or not. So after traversing, we mark things as visited, we mark hexes as visited, and we clean up that traverse so we can traverse again with a different function. So add row, join row, another join row. This is putting different hex rows together. It's just a little helper method. So this is where the board actually comes together. So there's 3 wide on the top, then 4, then 5, then 6, then 5, then 4, then 3. And if you look at the board from top left to right, that's how it's laid out. Min depth. I think this is looking to what score your current hex is based on how far it can go out to the world. And I think it just sort of reaches out with its little tentacles. So this set score, so this is an instance of using the traverse function. We just pass it the root hex and call set score, and it traverses the whole thing and sets the score for each hex based on where it is now that they're all put together as a board. And then this clean function is called to mark all those visited items as null. Or false, I guess. So hexes have this number, this index map, and if I ask for hex 27, with this function, it'll go through, and if it finds hex 27, it will select it for me. Select hex, if hex index map. Yeah, so this is another instance of traverse, and it uses this function and this global to give it to me. Here we have a little board set up with the grid and some CSS, so it's offsetting certain pixels here, and the different colors based on the score. So if the current hex score is 1, then it's this color, and if it's 4, it's that color. And if we need the score color later, I think for the little like current score you're gonna get boxes, we use it here. So we're getting the image for a piece. So different trees and sizes and seeds and different players have different images. So here we're calling this getImage function, which is right here, that gets the SVG file, and that's the other files that are included in the repository. And then sizes have seed is 0, and then a small, medium, large tree. So this is a map from the number size to the letters, so we can like log the right things, have them named correctly. So this is part of the UI disabling interfaces. So this turns off all the grids. This enables one element to click on. And then here's what happens when we click on different hex elements. So once they're activated, we have a certain select mode variable, so it's like global. And there's different actions. So grow will change this to the next size up. So it goes from a seed to a tree, like a small tree, or a small tree to a large tree, or even I think a large tree to a harvested tree. Here we're selecting a tree to throw a seed from. So it's got to be like a tree that hasn't been activated or used yet. Sorry, used that term. And so this is the process of that. This one is planting a seed. So once you select that tree, then the next thing to do is select a place to plant the seed. So you choose the tree, and then you choose the open ground to plant the seed in. And then putting your first tree is a little bit different because it has to be at one of the outer rim areas. And then game loop triggers the main game loop. It's more like a turn loop, I think, or a round loop where it moves the sun and then does the rest here. So next first player moves the first player around. Every round, there's a new first player moves to the next person. First round, you don't move the sun. Every other round you do, so that's why there's variables here. So this is checking for the end of the game state. Max suns, it's a variable because it's an option. You can have, I think, 18 or 24 sun moves in the game. So if we move the sun, it updates some UI, and the players absorb, they get their energy. And if it's not the first turn, then you select the next first player, so the first player moves along, and then it goes through all the players and gives them their turn. This is perform actions, I believe. Otherwise, if we're all out of suns and it's the end of the game and we figure out the score, we log the score, we figure out the winners, we count the trees on the board, if there's a tie, and then if there's a tie and they all match, then print out that they're both winners or whatever. So perform actions is the sort of like main UI update thing, I believe. So depending on the player, you have different colors, and this is just getting the text from that number. This is growing a tree, and I think we saw that up above as one of the actions you could do. And this is planting a seed. As you see, if things change, the display gets updated. And this one updates the image, so it would have the seed, and this would update the image, so it would be like from a small tree to a larger tree, to a seed to a tree. And here's the update image function. So I think this is appending the overlay that makes button where to click. So it's a little bit weird because there's layers, right? So the hex has layers. One layer is like the background of it. One layer is the highlighted piece. One layer is the tree. And the layer over top of it is like a transparent button you click on. Here's the make button function, and here you can see that it's doing this 60, 0, minus 60, 0, 60 rotation. It's doing this transform rotate. So that's taking a rectangle upright, and then one that's like this, and one that's like this, and putting them all together to make a 6-sided hex. It looks nice, because they're all the same color and such. Here we are performing the function to select a tree to seed, so it's figuring out what trees are available if you have enough energy, and then updating the UI to show you which ones you can click on. Similar to you, this one is another function to plant the first tree, so it's going to show you the UI, where to click and stuff. This is going to show you where your seeds can be planted, and this function is going to show you if you can grow the tree. So if you can change that tree into a bigger one. So if it's already been activated, then I won't let you do it. If it's in the shade and you have that mode enabled, then I won't let you do it. If you don't have enough money, you don't have the piece to do it, then I won't let you do it. Here we are growing a tree. From size. And we pass in a size. Oh, yes. So it's going to show you, so when you go to grow a tree, you click on the activated piece. So let's say you say the medium tree you click on, and then it's going to show you all the unactivated small trees of yours on the board that can be grown. You shouldn't get here to any of these messages. You should just or you shouldn't get to the error message. So this is setting up the boards for the players, I believe. This is just putting a message in the log, so it's the log you see through the gameplay. This is absorbing the energy from the sun, so it's taking into account the size of trees and the shade. And this is very similar, showing the shadows and stuff. I think this has to do with the placeholders on your on your little player board, and there is a limit to how many you can have there. I think counting plays for scoring at the end. It's been a while since I've been through all this. Update display will refresh the display, so sometimes things get changed that need to be updated, scores and such, and it'll just re-render it. So this enable current player actions, so when it's not your turn, your stuff's all grayed out, so when it is your turn, it does enable the buttons you can use. And this just takes the count of placeholder pieces you use. So if you you can only have, say, like 4 seeds there. So if you take one, it'll usually you activate it, right? You activate from your placeholder. They're just setting up the cost list. So different things cost certain energy and setting it up. So this is activating a piece, so it's coming from your placeholder to your active section, and that costs energy. When you're done the turn, if you're the last player, then it starts a new game loop, so it moves the sun around. Otherwise, it just goes to the next player. See, cancel. Where's that used? Unclick cancel button. Looks like in very few places. So this is updating the scores. Here's some more setup stuff, I think. So this is shade option and max suns are the two sort of optional variables when you start the game. So when you click, it just changes the global variable. And then here's the how many players you start with buttons. So these are like UI elements: main UI, finish turn, cancel, the game log section, and instructions, which are toggleable. And then the link to toggle the instructions down here, and my contact information in the GitHub. So, any questions? Anything you want fixed? I'll clone the repo, go for it. Alright, I've been Chris, and this has been Shade Harvest Code Tours. My first time doing something like this. Hope it'll work out.